I am a nurse, work on crazy shifts in a hospital here in Houston, and to relieve stress, I was always going to work out at Gold's Gym that is in a mall strip near my house. It was a normal day. A Thursday, it was over 9 p.m., and the gym was almost empty. Only a few dripped cats on the devices. I had finished my training, sweaty, dead tiredness, and went to pick up water on the drinking fountain. I left my gym bag on the side, as I always did without thinking too much. When I came back, about 5 minutes later, the bag was there, but the zipper was open, and my wallet was all turned, cards and money scattered on the floor. I was confused because there was no one around, and I swear it didn't take it so long. I rolled everything, but it seemed that nothing was gone. I found it strange, but I thought maybe I had left my bag badly closed. Only that was hammering in my head. The next day, already in the hospital, I received a call from a blocked number. It was noon, I was in the break, and when I attended, I only heard a heavy breath on the other side. I didn't say anything. I thought it was prank, and I hung up. But at night, when I got home, the phone rang again, the same number blocked. This time, a half-hoarse male voice said, "You ran 20 minutes on the treadmill yesterday, right? And then did that leg exercise with 50 pounds. My heart froze. He described my training exactly as it was, until the order of the exercises. I asked who it was, almost screaming, but he just laughed and hung up. I was shaking, looking at the apartment windows, afraid of someone watching me. I didn't sleep well that night, thinking about who I could know so much about my training. I tried to remember someone at the gym, some strange face, but nothing came to mind. It was as if the person had been there watching me without me realizing it. The next day, Saturday, I decided that I was no longer going to step on that Gold's Gym. I was paranoid, thinking that someone from there was following me or whatever. I signed up for another gym across the city, a smaller network with fewer people. I thought that moving would solve, that perhaps it was just a crazy man who attended the same time as me. But on Monday, after my first training in the new gym, the phone rang again. It was the same number blocked. My stomach rapped it when I attended and heard that hoarse voice. "The ergometric bike today, huh? And that stretch in the corner, well, time consuming." I almost let my cell phone fall. He knew exactly what I had done, even the corner where I stretched, near a mirror. I hung up on time with my hands sweating and ran to lock the door. It was as if he had followed me, but I swear I didn't see anyone strange at the gym. I looked out the window, but the street was empty, only the noise of the cars in the distance. I went to the police the next morning, not knowing what to do. I told everything, showed the calls in the history of the phone, explained how he knew every detail of my workouts. The policeman who answered me was friendly, but said blocked numbers are difficult to track. Even so, they managed to find that the calls came from a prepaid cell phone, bought at a gas station a few blocks from Gold's Gym, where it all started. It made me even more terrified because it was too close. They had no cameras in the post cashier, so I couldn't know who bought the phone. I left the police station with a tightness in my chest, feeling that there was no solution. I came home looking over my shoulder, afraid of anyone who passed me on the street. Every noise in the apartment made me jump, and I couldn't stop thinking, how did he know where I was? That same day, in the afternoon, I decided not to go to the gym. I was so afraid that I barely left home. I checked the locks from the door and windows, with my cell phone in hand, kind of waiting for another call. Around 6 p.m., the phone rang, and my heart shot. It was the number blocked again. This time I didn't answer, but he left a voice message. With my hands shaking, I put to hear. The same hoarse voice said, "It wasn't working out today, right? It's afraid, nurse." He knew I hadn't gone, and worse, I knew I was a nurse. I never told that at the gym, nor did I use hospital badge there. I was paralyzed, sitting on the couch, looking at the cell phone like exploding. How could he know so much? I thought of someone from the hospital, some colleague, but no one there seemed to have reason to do that. My head was 1,000 trying to put the pieces together, but it made nothing sense. I decided to turn off my cell phone and spend the rest of the day at my best friend's house. Lisa. I told her everything, and she was as scared as me. We were trying to remember any detail, any strange person who could be watching me. Lisa suggested that maybe someone had moved my bag that first day to get information, like a document with my name or something. But my wallet only had cards, money, and driver's license. Nothing that said I was a nurse. We stayed late thinking about possibilities, but no explanation was hitting. I slept on Lisa's couch with his cell phone off, but still couldn't relax. Every noise in her house made me wake up, thinking someone was out there. It was as if he knew where I was all the time, and I couldn't escape. I returned home the next morning, still shaken, but needing to face the situation. I turned on my cell phone and, to my relief, had no new call. I decided to take courage and went to the market, because my refrigerator was empty. As he chose fruits, I felt a shiver, as if someone was looking at me. I looked around, but I only saw people shopping, no one paying attention to me. Even so, my heart was accelerated, and I couldn't stop checking the corridors. When I arrived at the cashier, my cell phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text message of an unknown number. Green apples, good choice. I almost let the shopping fall. I looked everywhere, desperate, but I didn't see anyone with a cell phone in my hand or acting strange. I ran out to the car, locked the doors, and drove home crying. He was on the market with me, had to be. I got home and locked it all with my curtains closed. I called police again, showed the message, and they said they were going to try to track the number, but it was probably another prepaid. I sat in the living room with a kitchen knife in hand, because it was the only thing that made me feel a little safe. I couldn't stop thinking about how he knew so much: my work, my workouts, even what I bought. I tried to remember that day at the gym, the open bag, but made no sense. Did he get something I didn't notice? Or was it someone who already knew me? My head hurt from trying so much to understand. The worst was the feeling of being watched all the time, as if he could see me even indoors. I didn't eat anything all day, so nervous, and stared at the cell phone, afraid of another message. Around 8 p.m., I was getting dark, and I still didn't have the courage to light the lights, afraid of someone seeing me through the curtain cracks. He was sitting on the living room floor, hugging his knees, when I heard a noise on the front door, as if someone had leaned against her. My heart fired, and I clung the knife more strongly, without even breathing properly. I stared at the door, hoping to hear something else, but I was only silent. After a few minutes, I raised courage and went to the door, still shaking. I looked at the magical eye, but I didn't see anyone. I opened a crack, just to check, and saw a piece of paper on the floor outside. It was a crushed gas station receipt, with a handwritten phrase in a black pen. "You look tired today." I almost faint. I locked the door on the spot and ran to check the windows, afraid he was still there. I don't know how I didn't screw up. I sat in the corner of the room, with the receipt in my hand, trying to understand what was happening. The roll was from a post that was a few blocks from my house, the same as the police said they sold the prepaid phone. My head was exploding with fear and confusion. Who was this guy? How did he know so much about me? And the worst, how did he know I was at home? That I was tired? I thought of calling Lisa, but I didn't want to scare her anymore. I called the police again, and they came in about 20 minutes. I showed the receipt, explained everything, and they searched the backyard and the street, but they found nothing. One of the police said it could just be someone wanting to scare me, but I should consider installing cameras. I was angry because it seemed that they were not taking it seriously. When they left, I locked it all over again and spent the night awake, with the knife on the side, looking at the door. It was almost midnight, and I was exhausted, but so afraid I couldn't even think about sleeping. I stared at the receipt, trying to find some clue, anything that explained who was doing it. The handwritten phrase seemed scribbled in a hurry, but the lyrics were firm, as if the person knew exactly what he was doing. I thought of burning the paper, but I decided to keep if the police needed. My phone was turned off since the message on the market because I couldn't stand another connection anymore. But even without the cell phone, the feeling of being observed would not leave. Every creak in the house, every wind noise, made me jump. I tried to convince myself that it was just my head, but then I heard a low sound, like a scratch, coming from the living room window. My heart stopped. I was frozen, holding the knife with no courage to move. The sound stopped after a second, but I knew it wasn't imagination. I got up slowly, with my legs soft, and went to the window, keeping the light off. I pulled the curtain just 1 millimeter, enough to peek. The street was dark, with the light of the pole flashing, but I saw no one. Only when I looked at the floor near the window, I had a mark on the earth, as if someone had stepped there. It was not a clear footprint, but it seemed recent because the earth was moist from the afternoon rain. My stomach rolled, and I went back to the corner of the room, trying to breathe. I thought about calling police again, but what were they going to do? To say it was just any brand? I decided I couldn't be alone and sent a smooth message from my notebook, asking her to come the next day. I spent the rest of the night sitting, with the knife in my hand, looking at the windows and the door, waiting for the next fright. It was as if he was playing with me, keeping me on the edge. When the sun started up, around 6 a.m., I was destroyed. I had not preached my eye, and my body hurt so tense. Lisa arrived about 8 a.m., and just seeing her face, I fell off. I told about the receipt, the mark on earth, and she got white, saying that I needed to leave home for a few days. I agreed, but first we decided to check everything around the apartment. We went out together, with her cell phone ready to call the police. We looked at the living room window, and the mark on the earth was still there, a little off, but it definitely looked a partial footprint. There was nothing more out of place, no roll or foreign object. Lisa suggested that we went to the police station to take the receipt and tell about the brand, but I was so tired that I just wanted to rest. I came back, took a backpack with some clothes, and went to her house. On the way, I was looking at the rearview mirror, thinking that any car behind me could be him. In Lisa's house, I finally felt a little safer, but I still had my nerves on the skin. I called my cell phone to see if there was something new, and to my surprise, I had no connection or message. It was strange because he seemed so obsessed with scaring me, and now nothing. I spent all day with Lisa, trying to distract myself, but couldn't stop thinking about what happened. At night, already exhausted, I decided to sleep in her guest room. Before erasing, I checked my cell phone again. Nothing. On the one hand, it was a relief, but on the other, it made me even more anxious. It was as if he was suddenly disappeared, but I knew it wasn't that simple. I closed my eyes, trying to relax, but the image of that receipt and the mark on earth didn't come out of my head. Even at Lisa's house, I still felt him, like a shadow that doesn't explain, but it's always there. It was a Thursday night, around 8 p.m., and I was at Planet Fitness here in Columbus's Suburbus, Ohio. The gym was crowded, as always is at this time, with people running in the treadmills, raising weight, and that constant noise of machines and pop music. I'm a college student, so I usually go there to unload the stress of the week. I was on the treadmill, sweating to the lot, with my cell phone on the machine's support, listening to a podcast. I had to take a towel from the closet because I was dripping sweat, so I paused the treadmill, left the phone there, and went quickly. It didn't even take 2 minutes, I swear. When I came back, the cell phone was gone. I looked around, looked on the floor, asked the face of the treadmill next door, but nothing. My heart fired on time because, who steals a cell phone in a gym full of people? I was desperate, but I remembered that I had the tracking app activated on your cell phone. I asked the gym manager to check the cameras while I was trying to keep calm. The place was so full that I could barely think straight with the noise of the machines and the conversations in the background. The manager, a sloppy guy, took me to the security room and showed the video. He was clear. A middle-aged man with a gray and hooded sweatshirt went through my treadmill, took his cell phone in disguise, and left the gym in less than a minute. I got angry, but also with a cold in my belly. Who does this? And why just my cell phone? The manager said he was going to call the police, but suggested that I try to track his cell phone first. I opened the app on the tablet of a friend who was with me and saw that the cell phone was about 2 kilometers away, in a residential neighborhood. My head was already 1,000, wondering what this guy could be doing with my cell phone. Me and my friend, William, decided to go after the cell phone. I know it sounds crazy, but I was so angry and so desperate that I couldn't just wait for the police. We took his car and were following the tracking app signal. The neighborhood where the cell phone was pointing was a little apart, with old houses and poorly lit streets. As we drove, I kept looking at the map on the tablet, and the point did not move, as if the phone had stopped in a specific house. My stomach was wrapped, and I kept thinking about what this guy could be doing. Did he just want to sell his cell phone? Or was it something worse? William was trying to calm me down, but I saw that he was nervous too. When we arrived on the street indicated, I stopped the car around 2 houses away. It was a 2-story house with the light of the porch on, but the dark windows. I stared at the tablet and the signal was there right there. Before deciding what to do, I decided to check if the phone was still working. I tried to send a message through the app, but nothing. Then, out of nowhere, I received a notification on the tablet. Someone had accessed my bank app. My heart almost stopped. I opened the app on tablet and saw that a $200 transfer had been made to an account I never saw in my life. Worse, my cell phone was sending messages to my contacts. A friend of mine, Jake, sent me a print on the tablet, asking why I was sending strange messages, like, "Hey, finds me around 11 p.m., brings money." I froze. It wasn't just a theft. This guy was passing me. I got my hands shaking, trying to change the bank's password by the tablet, but the connection was slow to the dam. I looked home again, and I swear, it seemed that someone was watching me from the second-floor window, but I couldn't be sure because of the darkness. I was afraid, but also with a rage I don't explain. William convinced me to call police before making any bullshit, like knocking on the door of the house. I was with his cell phone in hand, trembling, while explaining everything to the attendant. I talked about theft, the messages, the transfer to the bank, and gave the exact address where the sign of my cell phone was. The woman on the other side said a car was going to arrive in about 15 minutes, but we should not approach the house. Easy to talk, right? We were standing there in the car, looking at that sinister house, and I swear that each shadow seemed a person moving. He had a weird silence on the street, only broken by a dog barking in the distance. I tried to check the tracking app again, and the signal was still there, but now it seemed that the phone was moving inside the house, kind of one room for another. My head was 1,000, imagining this guy stirring my things, seeing my photos, my emails. It was as if he had invaded my whole life. While waiting for the police, I received another notification on the tablet. This time, it was an email from my own address, as if I had sent to myself. I opened "With your heart in your mouth," and it was a picture. A dark, granulated photo that seemed to be from the backyard of the house where we were. You could see a wooden fence and a garbage brass, just like what was on the ground of the house in front. In the corner of the image, there was a sentence written in capital letters. "You shouldn't be here." I showed it to William and he got white. "Dude, this is getting very crazy," he said, already calling the car to reverse. I didn't know if I cried, screamed, or ran out. How did this guy know we were there? Was he seeing us? I looked at the house windows again, and this time I was sure. A second-floor curtain moved lightly. My whole body froze, and I could only think that we were in danger. William was already accelerating to get out when we saw the headlights of a car folding the corner. I was never so relieved in life, but at the same time so terrified. We parked a few meters from the house, and 2 police officers came to talk to us. I explained it all over again, showed the tablet with the cell phone signal, the transfer in the bank, the messages to my contacts, and even the creepy photo with that sentence. One of the police, one older guy, seemed to take seriously, but the other younger made a face of those who thought it was just a silly theft. They asked us to wait in the car while knocking on the door of the house. I had my stomach rolled, looking at the tablet, and the cell phone signal was still there, now standing, as if it had been dropped in some corner. While the police approached the house, I noticed that the balcony light had turned off. I don't know if it was coincidence, but my heart fired again. It looked like the whole house was holding his breath. The police knocked on the door, and nothing. They hit again, called, and silence. William and I was stuck to the car window trying to see what was happening. After a few minutes, they came back and said no one answered, but they would check the backyard and try to contact the owner. In the meantime, I received another notification on the tablet. My cell phone had been turned off. The signal of tracking disappeared, simply evaporated. I tried to update the app, but nothing. It was as if the guy knew the police were there and had a way to erase the tracks. The older policeman scored all the information and said that the gym cameras guy was already known, a local thief who lived doing that kind of thing. But that didn't reassure me a little thing. If he was just a thief, why were he sending those messages? And the photo, and that phrase? My head was exploding, and I could only think that this guy knew exactly who I was. The police said they were going to make a police report and try to locate the guy, but that, as the cell phone was off, I didn't have much to do that night. They told me to go home and keep an eye on the bench, change all passwords, and warn my contacts that it wasn't me sending those messages. William and I returned to the car, but I was in pieces. My head kept passing everything. The guy taking my cell phone, the messages, the backyard photo, the curtain moving. It was as if he had planned every step to scare me. When I arrived at my apartment, it was over 11 p.m. I locked the door, checked the windows about 3 times, and sat on the couch with the tablet, trying to recover control of my life. I changed the bank password, the email, of everything I could remember. But all the time, I felt a tightness in my chest, as if there was still someone watching me. It was exhausted, but afraid of closing my eyes. As I tried to organize things, I received a call from an unknown number. My heart jumped, and I almost let the tablet fall. I didn't answer the first time, but the phone rang again, insistently. When I finally raised courage and answered, I only heard a low squeak, like a bad connection. I was quiet, waiting, and then I heard a sound that shivered me to the soul. Someone breathing heavily on the other side. It was not a normal breath, it was slow, almost mechanical, as if the person wanted me to know that it was there. I was paralyzed with the phone in the ear until the call fell. I looked at the number in the history, but it was just a lot of zeros, as if it didn't exist. I tried to call back, but gave invalid number. My apartment was completely silent, but I swear I heard a little noise on the door, like a light scratch. I took a knife from the kitchen and sat on the couch, my heart in my mouth, waiting for what? Beauty. I will proceed with the account, maintaining the same line of reasoning, fluidity, and style, following all the guidelines. First person, informal language, focus on one day, realistic details, human emotions, frightening and credible narrative, without ramblings or fanciful elements. Here are the next 2 paragraphs, each with 8 to 12 lines, for their assessment. I stayed there, stopped in the middle of the room, holding the knife so hard that my hand was hurting. The scratch on the door was not repeated, but I couldn't relax. Each little noise in the apartment, the floor of the floor, the refrigerator buzz, looked like a threat. I decided to check the door slowly, my heart knocking out so loud that I barely heard my own thoughts. When I looked at the magical eye, there was no one in the hallway, only the old rug of the building and the light flashing on the ceiling. I opened the door very slowly, just a crack, and I saw that there was a brand in Madeira, as if someone had passed something pointed. It wasn't deep, but it was there, and I know it wasn't before. I closed the door running, put the double lock, and dragged a chair to block the entrance. My head was shouting that it was the same guy, that he had followed me here, but how? He couldn't know where I lived, right? I sat on the couch again, still with the knife in my hand, and tried to convince myself that it was just paranoia. But then my tablet beeping with a notification. It was a text message from my own number. My stomach turned inside out. The message said, "Look under your bed." I froze, looking at the tablet as if he were going to explode. There was no way someone was sending this from my cell phone. He was turned off. The police confirmed. Even so, I was too terrified to ignore. I took a flashlight from the closet, still holding the knife, and dragged me to the bedroom. My breath was short, and I felt the sweat running down the back. I knelt slowly, lifted the cover, and illuminated under the bed. There was nothing, just dust and an old sock. But the relief lasted half a second, because when I got up, I heard another noise, this time coming from the bedroom window. A snap, as if someone had hit the glass. Okay, I will finish the report, maintaining the same line of reasoning, fluidity, and style, following all the guidelines. First person, informal language, focus on one day, realistic details, human emotions, frightening and credible narrative, without rambling or fantasy elements, with an emblematic outcome that leaves an air of mystery. Here are the last 2 paragraphs, each with 8 to 12 lines, to complete the 12 paragraphs requested. I froze in the middle of the room with the flashlight in my hand, staring at the window. The snap was not repeated, but I was so afraid that I could barely move. The curtain was closed, and I didn't have the courage to open to look. I wondered, that guy out there with my cell phone watching me, knowing exactly how to scare me. I took the tablet and called William, who answered in the first touch. I told everything, the message, the noise, the mark on the door, and he said it was coming to my building on time. While waiting, I went to the corner of the room, still with the knife, and stared at the window, waiting for another noise. Nothing happened. After about 15 minutes, William arrived, knocked on the door, and shouted my name. I opened it, and he came in pale, asking if I was fine. We checked the window together, but there was nothing outside, neither brand nor footprint. Nothing. It was as if the sound came out of nowhere. The rest of the night was a blur. William stayed with me until the sun rises, and we tried to track the cell phone again, but the sign never came back. Police called in the morning, saying that the camera's guy was identified, a known thief who had already sold my cell phone. They recovered the device days later, but the messages, the photo, the strange call, no one ever explained. The guy swore he only stole to sell, that he didn't move in my apps, but I know what I saw. To this day, I don't know how he did those things, or if he was just him. Sometimes I look at my cell phone and I feel a shiver, as if someone still had access to my life. All of this happened that night, out of nowhere, and stopped out of nowhere too. I never saw that guy again, but I still feel him watching me, and I can't explain why. I am a nurse, work on crazy shifts in a hospital here in Houston, and to relieve stress, I was always going to work out at Gold's Gym that is in a mall strip near my house. It was a normal day, a Thursday. It was over 9 p.m., and the gym was almost empty, only a few dripped cats on the devices. I had finished my training, sweaty, dead tiredness, and went to pick up water on the drinking fountain. I left my gym bag on the side, as I always did, without thinking too much. When I came back, about 5 minutes later, the bag was there, but the zipper was open, and my wallet was all turned, cards and money scattered on the floor. I was confused because there was no one around, and I swear it didn't take it so long. I rolled everything, but it seemed that nothing was gone. I found it strange, but I thought maybe I had left my bag badly closed. Only that was hammering in my head. The next day, already in the hospital, I received a call from a blocked number. It was noon, I was in the break, and when I attended, I only heard a heavy breath on the other side. I didn't say anything. I thought it was prank, and I hung up. But at night, when I got home, the phone rang again, the same number blocked. This time, a half-hoarse male voice said, You ran 20 minutes on the treadmill yesterday, right? And then did that leg exercise with 50 pounds. My heart froze. He described my training exactly as it was, until the order of the exercises. I asked who it was, almost screaming, but he just laughed and hung up. I was shaking, looking at the apartment windows, afraid of someone watching me. I didn't sleep well that night, thinking about who I could know so much about my training. I tried to remember someone at the gym, some strange face, but nothing came to mind. It was as if the person had been there watching me without me realizing it. The next day, Saturday, I decided that I was no longer going to step on that Gold's Gym. I was paranoid, thinking that someone from there was following me or whatever. I signed up for another gym across the city, a smaller network with fewer people. I thought that moving would solve, that perhaps it was just a crazy man who attended the same time as me. But on Monday, after my first training in the new gym, the phone rang again. It was the same number blocked. My stomach rapped it when I attended and heard that hoarse voice. The ergometric bike today, huh? And that stretch in the corner, well, time consuming. I almost let my cell phone fall. He knew exactly what I had done, even the corner where I stretched, near a mirror. I hung up on time with my hands sweating and ran to lock the door. It was as if he had followed me, but I swear I didn't see anyone strange at the gym. I looked out the window, but the street was empty, only the noise of the cars in the distance. I went to the police the next morning, not knowing what to do. I told everything, showed the calls in the history of the phone, explained how he knew every detail of my workouts. The policeman who answered me was friendly, but said blocked numbers are difficult to track. Even so, they managed to find that the calls came from a prepaid cell phone, bought at a gas station a few blocks from Gold's Gym, where it all started. It made me even more terrified because it was too close. They had no cameras in the post cashier, so I couldn't know who bought the phone. I left the police station with a tightness in my chest, feeling that there was no solution. I came home looking over my shoulder, afraid of anyone who passed me on the street. Every noise in the apartment made me jump, and I couldn't stop thinking, how did he know where I was? That same day, in the afternoon, I decided not to go to the gym. I was so afraid that I barely left home. I checked the locks from the door and windows, with my cell phone in hand, kind of waiting for another call. Around 6 p.m., the phone rang, and my heart shot. It was the number blocked again. This time I didn't answer, but he left a voice message. With my hands shaking, I put to hear. The same hoarse voice said, "It wasn't working out today, right? It's afraid, nurse." He knew I hadn't gone. And worse, I knew I was a nurse. I never told that at the gym, nor did I use hospital badge there. I was paralyzed, sitting on the couch, looking at the cell phone like exploding. How could he know so much? I thought of someone from the hospital, some colleague, but no one there seemed to have reason to do that. My head was 1,000 trying to put the pieces together, but it made nothing sense. I decided to turn off my cell phone and spend the rest of the day at my best friend's house, Lisa. I told her everything, and she was as scared as me. We were trying to remember any detail, any strange person who could be watching me. Lisa suggested that maybe someone had moved my bag that first day to get information, like a document with my name or something. But my wallet only had cards, money, and driver's license. Nothing that said I was a nurse. We stayed late thinking about possibilities, but no explanation was hitting. I slept on Lisa's couch with his cell phone off, but still couldn't relax. Every noise in her house made me wake up, thinking someone was out there. It was as if he knew where I was all the time, and I couldn't escape. When I finally reached my building, I parked as close as possible to the entrance. The night doorman didn't even get his eyes up as I ran through the lobby. Inside the elevator, I stared at my distorted reflection on polished metal, wondering if I was getting paranoid. Maybe it was just a stupid joke of some student who attended the same gym. But how to explain the ticket on the windshield? Had anyone followed me from school to the gym? The idea made me feel nauseous. When the elevator doors opened on my floor, The hall was silent and almost dark, with just a few emergency lights on. I walked quickly to my apartment, the 407, constantly checking over my shoulder. Upon arriving at the door, I noticed that something was wrong. The plaque with the apartment number was slightly crooked, as if someone had moved her recently. With my heart rapidly, I put the key in the lock and opened the door slowly, fearing what I could find inside. I lit all possible lights as soon as I entered, checking each room with a mixture of fear and determination. My apartment was small, so it didn't take long to confirm that I was alone. Everything seemed normal and in his proper places. I locked the door with the current and the extra lock I installed when I moved here. Only then did I throw my backpack on the couch and allowed myself to breathe a little. While trying to convince me that it was all a coincidence or stupid joke, I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. That's when I noticed the refrigerator door, which I always leave closed, was ajar. A tiny detail that I could usually have ignored, but at that moment it seemed glaringly wrong. With hands shaking, completely opened the door of the refrigerator. The inner light revealed that everything was as I had left in the morning, except for a disturbing detail in the center of the middle shelf. There was a third ticket, folded and leaning against my bottle of water. Even before opening, I already knew what I would find. The same scribbled red letter. "Welcome home, Mark. You're not alone." I read and reread those words, trying to understand how someone could have entered my apartment. The porter would have seen, the security cameras would have registered, and I was absolutely sure that the door was locked when I arrived. My legs weakened and leaned on the kitchen bench as I tried to deal with the absurd reality I was facing. Someone not only knew my name and where I was working out, but I also knew where I lived and had managed to get in my apartment. I grabbed my cell phone and called the police with trembling hands. While waiting on the line, I started to question if I was not reacting exaggeratedly. After all, they were just tickets. No one had physically hurt me, but the invasion of privacy and the clear sense of threat was too real to ignore. When they finally attended, I explained the situation to an attendant who seemed more bored than worried. She wrote down my data and said a car would go to check, but without much urgency in the voice. "Sir, unfortunately we can't do much with anonymous tickets, especially without direct threats. Keep your doors locked and let us know if there is any physical approach," was the advice I received before she turns off. I stayed there, stopped in the middle of the room, with the phone still in hand and a full sense of abandonment. I decided to check that the windows and doors were really safe. As I passed the room window, I noticed something in the building across the street. It was an apartment directly facing mine with the lights off, but I was sure to see a silhouette moving behind the curtain. I quickly turned off the light in my room to see better. I pretended to look at that window and, for a moment that looked like an eternity, saw nothing more. Then it happened. The curtain moved slightly and could distinguish the outline from someone standing, watching toward me. I couldn't see a face, just the shape of a property, as if staring at me through darkness. I backed away, stumbled on the carpet and falling sitting on the couch. When I looked again, the silhouette was gone. Was my mind preaching pieces on me? Was the paranoia take over my senses? Couldn't sleep that night. I sat on the bed with my back against the wall, all the lights on and a kitchen knife beside me. With each small noise in the building, the elevator rising, a door knocking upstairs, the normal creak of the structure, I jumped, ready to defend myself. I mentally reviewed each person who could have some reason to scare me like that. Ex-girlfriend? The last relationship I had ended over a year ago, in a friendly way. Problematic students? I was always fair in the reviews. I never had serious conflicts. Envious colleagues? Nothing that justified this kind of persecution. The more I thought, the less sense it made. Around 3 in the morning, exhausted but unable to relax, I decided to research my laptop on similar cases. I typed threatening tickets, chase, home invasion, and the like. I found dozens of stalking cases, but none with the same strange pattern as it was living. The dawn met me with deep dark circles and the nerves on the skin. I called the school warning that I was sick and would not work. There was no position to face a room full of teenagers in that state. I dragged myself to the kitchen to make a coffee, and it was then that I noticed the absolute silence in the apartment. Nothing was heard, neither the noise of traffic outside, nor the neighbors, nor the ventilation system. It was as if the world had been placed on the mute. Strangely, that silence seemed more threatening to me than any noise. I went to the room window and opened the curtains. The building in front was there, normal as always, people gonna work, cars passing. But I couldn't hear any of this. That's when I noticed a small white object stuck outside my window. My stomach sank when I realized it was another note, folded and stuck with tape outside the glass. How could anyone put that there? I live in the 4th floor. With my legs wobbly, I opened the window and took the ticket, almost knocking it down to the street below. My hands trembled so much that I had difficulty unfolding the paper. The message, written with the same red pen, said only, "Look at the ceiling of your room." I was paralyzed, holding the ticket and looking at the corridor that led to my room. The idea that someone could have done something in my room, where I sleep, made me nauseated. I took a deep breath several times, trying to gather courage. Part of me just wanted to run out of that apartment and never come back. But I knew I needed to face whatever it was. I walked slowly down the hall, feeling every step as if going to the force. When I arrived at the bedroom door, I stretched my arm and lit the light, still standing at the entrance. The room seemed normal at first glance. Non-night bed in nose, clothes thrown in the chair, semi-communicated curtains. Then I looked up as the ticket instructed. In the white ceiling, well above my bed, there was something that was definitely not there before. A red symbol, seeming to have been painted with the same ticket as the tickets, but too large to be made with a simple pen. It was a circle with an X crossing it, and small risks coming out of the edges like rays. It looked like some kind of occult symbol, but the one that saved me most was realizing that to draw it, someone had to be inside my room as I slept the night before. The idea of someone standing on my bed while I slept, drawing on the ceiling, made me feel like I was suffocating. I left the room tripping and ran to the bathroom, where I vomited violently. When I lifted my face and looked in the mirror, noticed something that made me freeze. There was a small red mark on my forehead, just like the symbol of the ceiling. The brand was the size of a coin, and I knew with absolute certainty that I wasn't there when I looked in the mirror before bed. I rubbed frantically, using soap and water, alcohol, anything I found in the bathroom closet. The brand came out partially, but left a reddish contour, as if it had been pressed on my skin while I slept. At that moment, I decided it wouldn't be another minute in that apartment. I placed some essential clothes and items in a backpack, took my wallet and the car keys and ran to the door. When I opened it, I came across an elderly neighbor who lived in the apartment in front, Mrs. Peterson. She looked at me with a strange expression, mixing confusion and worry. "It's okay, Mark? I heard you talking to someone all night." It looked like a very heated discussion, she said, looking over my shoulder into the empty apartment. I was paralyzed. I hadn't talked to anyone, much less had any discussion. "Someone entered my apartment," I managed to babble without going into details. I didn't want to sound like crazy talking about tickets and symbols. Mrs. Peterson frowned. "Strange. I stayed up almost all night with my arthritis and didn't see anyone coming in or out, just heard the voices." I thanked him quickly and left toward the elevator, feeling her gaze on my back. On the way to the parking lot, I called the police again, this time insisting more urgently. I explained about the invasion and the symbol. They promised to send someone to check, and I said I would expect in the parking lot. I didn't mention the mark on my forehead or Mrs. Peterson about voices. It seemed too crazy even to me. When I arrived in my car, I realized that my hands were shaking so much that I couldn't fit the key to the ignition. It was then that I noticed something in the passenger seat that made me drop a muffled scream. Another red note, folded perfectly. With my heart almost out of the mouth, I took the ticket. The words jumped into my eyes. "You can't get away from yourself, Mark." I threw the paper on the car floor as if on fire. How could anyone have anticipated that I would run away? How did you get in my locked car? It was getting hard to distinguish what was real from what my mind could be preaching pieces. I began to seriously consider the possibility of having some kind of nervous collapse. Perhaps the accumulated stress of work, loneliness, some undiagnosed medical condition, but everything seemed so real. The tickets were really there, not hallucinations. And that symbol on the ceiling, too big for me to have done unconsciously at night. I started the car and got out of the parking lot singing tires, without a certain destination, just wanting distance from that building. While driving the streets of Atlanta, I tried to organize my thoughts. I needed professional help, that was clear. Perhaps a hotel for a few days away from my apartment and an appointment with a psychiatrist. Or maybe you should go straight to a hospital. The idea of losing control of my own mind was as frightening as being persecuted. I turned on the radio to try to calm down, and immediately I froze when I heard what came out of the speakers. It was not music or news, but a low, distorted voice repeating my name. "Mark! Mark!" I hung up the radio with a slap and almost lost control of the car. I stopped on the shoulder, breathing as if a marathon had run. Is it possible for anyone to have hacked my car's radio system? This seemed too absurd to the nightmare I was living. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to recompose myself when I felt my cell phone vibrate in my pocket. It was a message of an unknown number. My hands trembled so much that I almost dropped the device as I opened it. "Look in the rearview mirror, Mark." I looked up slowly to the rearview mirror, terrified of what I could see. For a moment, I saw only my own pale and scared face reflected in the small mirror. So I noticed something that made my blood freeze. The mark on my forehead had changed. What was once just an outline now seemed to be pulsed and expand before my eyes, as if alive. Even more disturbing, in the rear seat, partially visible in the mirror reflex, there was a dark silhouette. He could not distinguish features, just a humanoid form, sitting perfectly immovable. I turned my body violently to look back, finally waiting to confront my stalker. But the rear seat was completely empty. I looked back into the mirror. The silhouette was still there, reflected, as if it existed only in the mirror world. I got out of the car panicked, throwing me out and leaving the door open with the engine still turned on. I was standing on the roadside, cars passing at high speed, honking to the crazy man who stopped on the side of the road and now stared at his own car like a monster. I looked back into the vehicle, empty, completely empty. I touched my forehead frantically, trying to feel the brand, but my fingers found only normal skin, without any different protrusion or texture. I was starting to doubt my own senses. I took the phone to check the message again to make sure that at least that was real, not a hallucination. But when I opened the messaging app, there was nothing of any unknown number. I searched all folders, archived messages, spam, everything. Nothing. The message I was absolutely sure of having received minutes before simply no longer existed. It was at this moment that I began to seriously consider that it could be losing my sanity. I sat in the grass of the shoulder, trying to recover my breath and decide what to do. That's when I saw a man approaching the road, walking calmly toward me. He was a gentleman of about 60 years, gray hair, wearing a uniform of law fitness janitor. The uniform was impeccably clean, almost too young. He had never seen him before at the gym, and he was at least 2 kilometers away from the nearest branch. As he approached, I realized that he smiled in a disturbingly familiar way. When it came close enough for me to see his face clearly, I noticed that he had the same red symbol on his forehead. He stopped a few meters from me, still smiling. "Did you finally understand, Mark?" he asked in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at the same time. I took a step back, stumbled. "Understand what?" I managed to ask. My voice almost disappeared. The man pointed to my forehead and then to his. The brand. She was always there. It's not something someone put in you. It's something you have always had. I shook my head, refusing to accept what he said. What do you want from me? Why are you doing this? I shouted, feeling the sanity escaping between my fingers like fine sand. The man just smiled more, his fixed eyes on mine. I'm not doing anything, Mark. You're. Before I could answer, he turned and began to walk away, walking in the opposite direction. I stood there, watching him disappear in the distance. When he disappeared out of sight, I took my cell phone and, with trembling hands, I used the front camera to examine my forehead. There was no mark. I went back to the car slowly, still in shock. In the driver's seat, there was a last red ticket. I took it mechanically, almost without strength to be afraid. The message said only, "You were always alone. This happened 3 days ago. Since then, there have been no tickets, no visions, no strange symbols." I went back to my apartment after spending a night in a cheap hotel. Everything was normal, as if nothing had happened. The symbol on the roof of the room was disappeared. My neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, categorically denied having talked to me about voices or anything else that day, said she was visiting her daughter in another state. The police never appeared. When I called the complaint, there was no record of my call. Now I'm here, sharing this with you because I need to know if I'm going crazy or if anyone else has gone through something like. I went back to my routine, teaching, going to the gym, another now, living normally. But whenever I look at mirrors by a fraction of a second, I still see that red mark on my forehead. And sometimes, when I'm almost sleeping, I hear those distant beats. Tech, tech, tech. Was all this just the result of my imagination? A temporary nervous collapse? Or is something more happening? Something I can't understand? Anyway, I could never look at gym cabinets the same way.